are. Another episode of In the First.
Yes.
Man, here we are. So, Jim Weldon, Chris Baronio.
Hello.
We have some guests today.
Yeah, we do.
Chris.
Well, who do we have over here? Another Delawarean. We'll go first.
No,
in
Nick
the first
Niles, the executive director for the Delaware Republican Party.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for joining us.
And our
We have
special guest of
Special
honor.
guest, absolutely.
And I'm Dr. Cordie Williams of 1776 Forever Free, and I'm a doctor and a dad, a U.S. Marine, and glad to be around some non-communist patriots from the great state of Delaware.
Hey, amen. Yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
We're here. So
Here we are.
So now we are also going to be doing a bourbon in the first.
Bourbon in the
Nice.
first.
Yeah.
I
So
like
do
that.
you have yours?
I do. Let's partake.
All right.
Bourbon
we
in
go.
the first. I like
Cheers.
that. I like the way that sounds.
I'm
All
not
right.
drinking
And-
anything.
Not drinking.
Yeah,
We
All
got
right.
Divey,
Toast bourbon.
diverticulitis, doing a little.
Yep. There we
little
are.
toast.
DV in the first.
So,
Mm,
so this is
Yeah, Jim, tell us about it.
tasty.
this is Angel's Envy right there, and this is the Angel's Envy Triple Oak. Now, my go-to bourbon, I've already said this before, is Woodford Reserve Double Oak. This is the Triple Oak. Excellent bourbon, great sipping bourbon. A little more expensive for you. You know it's expensive when you, as you said, when you see the fancy little blue. thing
Yeah, you
up
got the little blue stuff,
top
and
there,
it's
yeah.
non-libtard.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it just it means nothing political. It just
No,
means
just-
I'm the shit. I bought an expensive bottle, and I'm doing it for Dr. Cordie.
And here we
you
are.
Sponsored?
Yeah,
Are you
here we are.
sponsored by Angels Envy?
What's that?
Are you sponsored by them?
No, but
Not-
if they
not
would like,
yet.
if they Angels Envy, if you would like to sponsor us, because we just talked great stuff about your bourbon,
They
Awesome.
might have some nice ladies in bikinis,
it
possibly.
would be great.
I have a
Right now, we just
feeling.
take some money to buy some equipment.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but
Maybe the
And where
bikinis
are they
later on.
based?
yeah, it is a beautiful. See on the back, you can see the angel wings.
Yeah, it's got angel wings, just like, what is
Yeah.
that, Castaway?
Yeah, how about
Yeah.
that? Yeah, like Castaway. Yeah.
Does it show where they're based at?
I'm trying to figure that out. Kentucky Straight Bourbon. blah,
Probably
blah, blah,
Kentucky,
blah,
then.
blah. Probably. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, anyway,
Hmm.
great bourbon. Highly recommend
Louisville,
it. So,
Kentucky.
Now look at that. There you go.
Louisville. Yeah.
Thank you,
So-
Google.
Nice.
The brain.
There's a lot of
Getting on the
words on this
AI.
bottle.
I love Kentucky. I work down in Kentucky. The people in Kentucky are fantastic. They have suffered through some historic flooding, unfortunately. A very bad week this week for me because I have been to the Buffalo Trace Distillery, another bourbon, Buffalo Trace Distillery quite a bit, and they were severely impacted by the flood of the Kentucky River in Frankfort. But, yeah, Kentucky's had it really hammered, so very unfortunate.
I was going to say, we normally start off these podcasts by telling what date it is,
Right.
couple little tidbits of current events.
It is Saturday, April the 11th. So
12th.
is it the 12th?
It is the 12th.
No way. When did that happen?
Happened.
That started
the
today?
day after yesterday. Yeah.
Man, all right. Saturday, April the 12th.
Yep.
And
He's been
He,
drinking Angel's Envy.
yeah, we're well into it. But
That
anyway.
24-hour time change. It's crazy.
Does that happen like every 24 hours?
For a while. For
okay.
a while.
Okay. All right. I'm just not up with all that new stuff.
So floods in Kentucky.
Floods in Kentucky
Taking out
is-
Buffalo Trace
is the
Distillery.
big thing. As far as politically, President Trump's people met with the Iranians today, trying to see if they can figure out some resolution to ending their nuclear bomb program and to see if we can get the Iranians to not be the number one sponsor of terrorism across the world. And apparently, from what the report said, it went well enough that they're going to talk again. So that's a significant accomplishment. Prior to the meeting with the Iranians, the Trump people went over to Russia and met with some of the Russian delegation. And I think that there's going to be some type of a breakthrough there, which is personally what I think we really need. This war in Ukraine probably should have never occurred, my personal view, and hopefully President Trump can get that resolved. In the meantime, the stock market continues to go up and down. It was really kind of interesting because of the panic that happened on Monday. The world was coming to an end, and people were thinking this is horrible. The entire American economy is going to collapse. And then the next day, saw the biggest rise of the stock market in the history of the stock market. And in the day following that, it went back down a little bit again. So it's going to be a little bit of a turmoil. President Trump is playing multi-dimensional chess. And you have to understand that this is a long game. This is not a short-term thing. President Trump is doing something that had to have been done that no president has been willing to do. Number one, he's going to correct the trade imbalance, which has to occur. Number two, he's going to bring back manufacturing to the country, which we absolutely desperately need. And number three, which a lot of people haven't necessarily spoken about, but I think is very critical, is that he is going to put communist China in its place. They have been a manipulator of currency. They have a very closed system. They are unfair in their tariffs towards the United States, and they are the big bully. And so they will flood the market with a bunch of cheap product, having cheap labor. It was a huge mistake, I think, 20 years ago, when we let them into the World Organization, and it's time to put an end to that. And President Trump is going to do that. However, it's going to be painful for a while, so we have to understand that. But in the end result, this short-term pain is going to be a long-term gain. And I'm a poet, don't you know it? So
Sounded great.
okay.
Yeah, I think discussing all the tariffs and how and why and when they're going to have an impact on our economy or on everybody's pocketbook, I'd say that's a topic for another day. Because we could talk about that for a long time.
It is,
and we
so.
have Dr. Williams with us here.
We
And
do,
I think we got some
so.
great topics to talk about with him.
So the Megaphone Marine. So
Really?
we have an honor to have you here. Why don't you give us a little background about yourself?
Honored to be here, gentlemen. Appreciate it. And I say gentlemen lightly, especially when I refer to
Nick
Nick.
is here. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we get
you
that.
got to add
We get
context to that. But gentlemen, the three of us, that is.
It never ends.
It does not ever end.
The ball busting always has to go on. Okay, it's savage. It's savage and unrelenting.
It is.
But at any rate, no, honored to be here. My journey kind of got started probably back in 2020. Prayed for a legacy. My practice was going good for about 10 years in Carlsbad, California.
And what type of doctor are you?
I'm a chiropractor.
Right.
Manager of cause, not a manager of disease.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You
it's a
are, I
little
like
thing.
that.
Doctor
Oh,
of
wow.
cause, as we say at DC.
So like
Yeah.
Jill Biden a little bit, or
Well, he's a manager of hair sniffing,
Right.
so I don't know much else that he does. Usually, he doesn't even know where he is.
No,
His
I said,
asshole.
I said Jill Biden.
Oh,
Dr. Jill
his
Biden.
his
Doctor.
a hole from his b hole. he doesn't know the difference. But yeah, if you're talking about Jill Biden versus a doctor of chiropractic,
Yes.
yeah, we can argue about this later.
Right.
He always likes the fake doctor thing. Ooh, you're a chiropractor. You're a fake doctor. Ew. Okay, yeah. At any rate, skipping past that, so in 2020, when the COVID scam started, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but, like many Americans out there, we just saw, we basically saw our government saying, hey, everything's over, shut down your business, go home, put a facial condom on, and some lady wearing a massive scarf that wrapped around her entire face came behind a podium, started, spouting that off, and so did Anthony Fauci. And we just innately, as people that have always been kind of going against the grain of what everybody did, we didn't vaccinate. Our kids have never had a vaccine. They've been to a pediatrician maybe one time ever in their life.
Wait, whoa.
They were born at home.
Wait, they're still alive?
I know. And my liberal, progressive, crazy, 80% of my family told me they were going to die and we were bad parents and all this other crap, right? Meanwhile, in third world countries, women have been having babies for, thousands of years and literally walking, going to cut a cactus or a coconut fruit, and then the baby drops between their legs onto the ground, right? And we've made it this medicalized
I
process.
don't
That's
understand how that can happen, honestly. Yeah, anyway, that's another story, but go ahead.
Yeah, I love that. I love the sarcasm. He's being very sarcastic, guys, in case you didn't know, which I love it, by the way. But so at any rate, Scarf Lady and Fauci come out. They announce the whole world's going to end.
Scarf Lady meaning Colonel Burks.
Yes, Deborah Birx. Was she a colonel?
She was.
Oh, my
Really?
God.
Oh, I didn't realize
Was.
that.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Not-
For what, the Chair Force?
Not in the Marines.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
go ahead.
at any rate, I love my Air Force people, but you guys make fun of us and you say that we eat crayons, so I can I can throw it. And
you
I got
did.
a squid next to me, so, we can have fun over here, right?
Also,
Gotta
you
say
eat
love.
crayons
Look
too.
at me.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
And Nick tells me that all the time,
Yeah.
so it's his retort.
I think we've got some over here in the cabinet.
See? There you go. There you go. It started already.
It is.
But at any rate, so, basically they came on, said the world was shut down, and my wife and I saw a dip in our practice. It was $1 million practice.
yeah, you
lost-
You said a dip. You're being kind on that dip.
Yeah, no, I mean, we lost 50% of our patients. So we were seeing about 300 a week. It dropped down to 150. And these are people that were loyal patients, thought that, the flesh-eating bacteria with a 99.9% survival rate was going to kill everybody.
Mhm.
And, all the coaching groups out there were, just keep calling them. You'll get them back in. Maybe we got 10% back in, but 90% were permanently gone. Permanently gone. So the choice was over a couple of weeks, do we sit here and let our business die? Because you guys know the PPP thing and the SBA loans, I mean, that was, I think, 6 months, if not more, before that ever came out.
Right.
And so we're just like thinking about we didn't plan for this. We were in the stage where we were coming out of a lot of overhead, starting to save, young couple, new in business, screwed up the first 3 or 4 years and now kind of figuring it out. And so, long story short, we started doing protests. She came home. She's like, hey, babe, we got to start doing protests. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Marines don't protest. You crazy. Crazy new Long Island, New Hyde Park girl. I'm not doing that. And she's like, no, you have to. And I'm like, okay, babe. Well, happy wife, happy life type thing. And so we start doing protests. The third
Absolutely.
protest,
Very much.
I talked down some riot gear police at the Sacramento Capitol. And
So when you say talk down, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so basically, the elevator speech of the long story is basically Trump wasn't able to do rallies. If you guys remember back then, Antifa was out, BLM was out, streets were burning. That's when the Kyle Rittenhouse situation happened.
Right.
And it's just pandemonium. So the left in a very
And
orchestrated.
we're talking summer of 20.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
summer of
love,
20.
Summer of love.
Summer of love, exactly.
Love.
And context around that situation is what we know now, if we're sensible and critical thinkers and we're not morons, is we know that back then that was a setup for the scamdemic, a setup for mail-in ballots, and a setup for, a stolen election in 2020. And so, we just, it didn't make a lot of sense to us. And so we went up to the Sacramento Capitol to protest our right to have our business, to keep our business open, to not wear a mask. And, we showed up there. All these rallies had been stopped by Trump. And here we are, 3,000 people show up, unpermitted, because they want to say to voice your constitutional First Amendment right, you have to have a permit. So crazy. Just like you have to have a permit for your gun, even though that's a Second Amendment right.
It wasn't like a subsection in the small print in the Constitution.
Yeah,
where they said
crazy,
you had to
right?
Get a permit? No. Okay.
Yeah, funny, right? Funny how that works. So at any rate, we assemble there. They end up getting 500 California highway patrolmen, and the CHP in California are basically Gavin Newsom's henchmen. Lot of great people, but they have to abide to the, greasy-haired coke sniffer, and they have to do what he tells them to do. And so, they talked to us early in the day. We told them it was going to be a peaceful protest. It was. Early on, they were drawing lines in front of us, meaning with batons. They were kind of choreographing their position and very orchestrated and structured and flanking us from the left and right end. Midday, a couple hours into the protest, there's 3,000 people there. They're putting on shields. They almost had people come from doorways or tunnels, I guess, under the Capitol. And it's these guys, there was 300 of them that came out in full riot gear. The vest, the shields, the batons, the whole headwear and everything, the helmets. And so 300 to 500 of them are lined up like Praetorian guards, and they push us back probably about 100, 150 yards. And then they get up on this raised embankment. We'd seen people thrown to the ground. At the time, I thought there were some pastors that had been thrown to the ground. Later, I found out, maybe it didn't actually happen that way. But from my vantage point, it definitely looked like that when it first happened. And so I just started to talk to them about the oath that they took to the Constitution and how, so many people were getting screwed over during that time, financially and otherwise.
Right.
And that message really resonated with them. And a lot of them started to walk off that raised position. And Gateway Pundit, The Scoop, videoed that. A good friend of mine, I can't remember his name right now, but we were on the road several times together. A guy that's big in vaccines videoed that, and it got 22 million views.
Right.
And so then we started getting people around the country, and especially in California, that were inquiring about, Cordie, what do we do next? What's going on? And I really found myself in a unique position where, I felt like I had to do something. And, I've been waiting for this legacy that I felt like I prayed for from God, where I didn't feel like I was doing everything God wanted me to do. And so when this showed up, it was like, well, okay, Lord, I guess this is what you want me to do. And we launched a nonprofit called 1776 Forever Free, me and my best friend, Chris Lippy. And I spent about $150,000 of my own money. And we did a 6-city, 6-state tour where we got people like Joey Villa, David Harris Jr., I don't know if it was Mark Grice. I always get one of the guys from Benghazi. It was either Oz. I always get confused between these two guys. But we got several amazing speakers, Simone Gold, Crystal Tini, Conservative Linda, a lot of people that had big followings back then or even bigger now or have huge followings now, right, and didn't have a following back then. Partnered, with many organizations, did a walk in the right on BLM Row. We did a parade, a police-escorted parade. And, guys, we probably had 2,000 people that walked the streets of D.C. with us, and 80 to 90% were black. And that's just really refreshing when you hear this narrative that all Republicans are this and all the BS about Trump. And you guys know I'm talking to the choir. But, we did that, and I was on the road for about 2.5 years, 3 days a week. We would fly out on a Thursday. We'd get back on a Sunday. I'd work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and fly out somewhere else again. And usually, that schedule happened about 3 weeks out of the month. And I did that for probably 2 years. And then I ran for U.S. Senate, which was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Harder than Paris Island Boot Camp for the Marine Corps.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to win and be competitive,
sure.
Right?
So we'll get that in a second. Let's recap. So you're a doctor, having a successful practice, COVID hits, you're personally being impacted because of your business. But was it just the business issue that created you the desire to do something where your wife said you have to protest, or was there something else more than the fact that it's really hitting my business?
No, it's weird. And it's weird. I'm getting emotional about it, actually. It's funny. No, I mean, I was a Marine, and, every war the United States has ever faced or been in, my family's been a part of. Mm-hmm. Two of my grandfathers were World War II. One was on a destroyer as a Navy guy. The other one was on the beaches of Okinawa. And then my uncle was flying choppers in Vietnam. So, when the whole 2020 thing happened, even when the riots were going on, the BLM BS, I was ashamed to live in this country. Absolutely ashamed. I was ashamed when COVID happened. Just the where big government says, you know what, you don't matter, F you. You're going to do what we tell us, and you're going to like it. And it was disgusting to me. It was just absolutely disgusting. All the names on the Vietnam Memorial, the names at Arlington, everything that Chris to my left, everything that we fought for, Chris, everything that my brother was on subs for, everything he gave up with his family, it just really pissed me off, man. And all the kneeling BS was going on before that, and that was like a layer to some of this cultural, social shift that was happening in America.
So I wanted to touch on it for a minute because, as both the two of you, because when you are, entering the military, you take an oath of office to defend the Constitution.
Well, you were law enforcement, so
Correct.
you served
You
too.
also took
and,
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I did the same thing. So as law enforcement, we take an oath to defend the Constitution, right? And however, what happens is that, and I think many retired military people and many retired law enforcement people almost feel as if at times we were pawns.
Yeah.
The government is using us. The law enforcement is the most visible form of government. I mean, because we have uniforms and we go out and you can pull people over. Dr. James Souls, who was my advisor, who ended up being the chair of the Democratic Party years ago, when I took one of his classes in the American presidency, he said the most powerful person in the United States is the everyday beat cop, because they're the ones that have the ultimate power to restrict your freedom and to take your life, which is what we do. We have that right. But the problem is that you are used as this tool, but then you do have the oath of office, and now you're confronted with situations where I don't think this is right, what the government is making me do. So I guess that's that point that you felt, which is why you got emotional about it, because of the dedication that you and your family have done in serving the country, but now you're seeing this, what you would consider to be an abuse of the government. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really accurate characterization. I think that, you saw in COVID a lot of law enforcement personnel that didn't really, it's kind of like how we indoctrinate our people in schools and we indoctrinate our kids in schools. Schools don't really teach you anything. They indoctrinate you to the narrative they want you to, whatever belief system they want you to have. That's what it is. It's an indoctrination camp. We all understand that.
Right.
I think that they've done that with our police force in a lot of respects.
Right.
I think that there's some, Sheriff Lamb, there's some rogue sheriffs out there that, which I love that, because sheriffs are supposed to be rogues. I mean, a sheriff's the only one, to my knowledge and my learning, that he's the only one that could go and arrest a governor. Like that's a powerful SOB.
Yeah.
And sheriffs,
that you say that is here in Delaware, our sheriff's office doesn't have arrest authority.
No, they don't.
wow.
Yeah, sheriffs are a little bit different depending on the state.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
They just process and serve documents and evict people.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Constitution, and this
Right.
is what my good friend
Constitutional sheriffs.
Douglas V. Gibbs taught me, is he's a constitutional scholar, taught me that in the Constitution it talks about sheriffs.
It does.
And you look at that, and you look at how much they, as a culture,
Right.
as a group, right, an organization, they've let their power diminish through really a lack of knowledge and their leaders like enforcing that power. Because it's so funny when you talk about constitutional law and then you talk about government, and we see this now. There's so many forms of implied power where somebody really flexed their biceps 30 years ago, and now there are powers that were implicit that everybody respected, that weren't, where no one ever really called your bluff on it, but it was implied you could do that. We're seeing this with executive privilege, executive orders right now. You look at what Joe Biden, Bush 2, Bush 1, Clinton could do, and what they're doing to Trump. I never would have thought in my lifetime, and I'm 45 years old, that you would have a federal court try to undermine the president of the United States. What a travesty that's happening. So I would just say, I think that, the conversation around sheriffs and what we're talking about, I think it's a big mess that we have in this country.
So I want to take back just a little bit. Back when COVID first started shutting things down, which was around, March 13th. And I don't know if in California it was a little different, but March 13th of 2020.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Funny enough, it's actually our party chair, Julianne Murray's birthday that same day. And her story is very unique on that day. It was her 50th birthday. She was going to go skydiving in Virginia Beach, and the notice went out that the state borders were going to be closed. The bridge was shut down. She couldn't get across the Bay Bridge, so they canceled. Long and behold. So, being a chiropractor, having an office where people would come in, that original 2 weeks to slow the spread, do you feel as if, like when you first heard it, you knew what was happening with COVID, those first 2 weeks, did you were like, okay, well, let's go inside for 2 weeks and just kind of see what happens? Or from the beginning, you were like, something's up with this?
Well, we characteristically, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, probably, my kids were born at home. My wife and I have a filter on everything in our house. She has an organic makeup line that she uses and sells called Crunchy. We know if there's a chemical going into our body, like we know it. Like probably my hair gel and the bourbon I drink are the chemicals I have in my body, right? Like everything from deodorant to stuff we wash our clothes with. Like we have very specific companies we deal with. We don't even go to Whole Foods because they've been compromised, right? And I could talk for 2 hours about all that stuff. But, they did a great job of marketing the narrative of harm and you're going to die and fear, false evidence appearing real. And what really turned me, I think I just kind of laid low for 5 days. Not that we didn't change anything.
Yeah.
We didn't change anything. We kept our practice open. We were operating, but we also weren't, we were slow walking, maybe other events we might do or whatever, right? Kind of just seeing, okay, how's this going to look? And then we did what we always do. We looked at the research. I was about to drop an F-bomb. We looked at, I didn't even do it though. You can't beep. I didn't even say it. So you jerk. So then we started to look at the research, and there was a guy that was an epidemiologist, and pardon me, I can't remember his name, but regarded as the number 3 in the country from Stanford. He was the one that within the first 2 or 3 months of COVID started to point out where COVID came from and why there was this influx in, if you remember, the Italian hospitals and in China. And this number 3 epidemiologist in the world at Stanford said it's because they're grouping all the people with COVID in the same area of the hospital. So then Fauci and Deborah Birx are trying to create this 2 million people are going to die scale that they're pushing towards President Trump, which, in my opinion, and I said this on stage earlier today, that they all lied to him about. They're pushing this narrative that 2 million people are going to die, 4 million people are going to die. And the way they're scaling what's going to happen is based on false evidence, false stats, inaccurate information, right? And so we really looked at that, and that just, to answer your question, Nick, that really just spoke to us, and we're like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Yeah, this doesn't wash out.
I wanted to talk about the propaganda thing really quickly, and just as a side note. So the BLM protest was the result of the George Floyd, air quotes, murder, right? And so,
I like air quotes.
Yeah, which is very interesting because the autopsy said he died of a drug overdose.
He was a great human being. I don't know why you're giving him a hard time.
But there was a book that was written, and it's very informative right now because there was a book called The Fall of Minneapolis, which is based on Liz Collins' book. They're lying, the media, the left, the death of George Floyd, etc. Right? So, well, she was sued. Because the part that she raises that the training officer from the Minneapolis Police Department said that the chokehold that he did has never been trained, never recognized, and that was a key basis for the conviction of Chauvin, that he did this unauthorized chokehold, which helped facilitate the death of Floyd. The reality is, and this has been through a lawsuit that was filed by that officer that was tossed out, is that no, that was authorized. She authorized it, and she actually used it. And so that narrative never came out, because the narrative is that Floyd died, murdered by a police officer, although it was a drug overdose. The other part was that the chokehold that he utilized was not authorized. It actually was authorized. It's part of the indoctrination, just like the part of the indoctrination that occurred with Ferguson and the hands up, don't shoot, which was a lie, never occurred. So these constant stories get out there, and then you just talked about Birx and Fauci and the lies that they put out. That after the fact, the 6 foot separation, the masks. Fauci said, I don't know, I made it up.
Yeah, and if you remember, to your point, Jim, he flip-flopped it on it like 5 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you read the OSHA, what was really funny during that time, if you looked on the OSHA, there was a video that went viral. I don't know if you guys saw it, but of 2 ladies that were OSHA expert superintendent inspectors, whatever their title was, high up in OSHA for kind of knowing what a valid mask was, valid procedure for, environmental toxins and what you ingest and inhale and all that crap, right? And they shared what the procedures and policies were for masking, but also what the effective masks were that would work for like COVID-sized particles and what wouldn't work. And then the OSHA website had a list of, like this is when a mask like this would work, this is when it wouldn't. You could download that for 2 weeks, and then it just disappeared.
Right.
Like it was nowhere to be found, right? And, that's just so telling, because how many times did Fauci flip-flop on whether a mask would work, whether it wouldn't, then it does no good. He was up and down, and you still have people, and I call them morons and idiots, that you see on planes that are wearing these useless, immune-suppressive facial condoms
Right.
that make their problem worse, don't do anything for them. It's just like people that I'll see all the time. I had a gentleman tell me today from the party, Vinny, and he was telling me about family members that were criticizing him and his wife for choosing not to get the shot. They got COVID. They got over it. 80% of the family, they get the shot. They still get COVID. And they wanted their elderly grandmother to get it too. It's like, wait a minute. Everybody got COVID, and your shot's supposed to prevent you from getting COVID. You got it anyways, and you still, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, and you look at that, and you just look at the lack of critical thinking
Right.
and how many sheep there are. It's fascinating to me.
Well,
Those are examples of where the propaganda has been effective,
Yeah.
right? Somebody in a pulpit with the perception of authority and expertise says something, and millions and millions of people go along with it, and maybe even, I'd say, worse than that is you have the media outlets just parrot it. They don't question it. They don't dig into it. They don't analyze it. They don't look at, maybe is there an alternative to this? Let's evaluate, both sides of a story type of thing. They just parrot it again, amplify it, spread it, all of that, and people just go along with it.
Yeah.
When you look where majority of the populations are, which are urban cities. I mean, I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, and all of my family's there. The black side of my family is growing up in Camden, New Jersey. They're all in those sub-area parts of Camden, and they believed what they were listening. The reality is majority of Americans aren't informed. They turn on their TV at 6 o'clock in the morning, having their coffee, watching the Weather Channel, watching what the news is saying. They go to work. They come back home. They turn it right back on. They hear the repetitiveness, the constant flow of information, disinformation, really, and they constantly like, okay, this is serious. I have family members that would not want to see me at all in any way, shape, or form if I didn't wear 2 masks and a face shield, or if I wasn't vaccinated. I just didn't go see them. That's the reality of it. But they really believed that information. My aunt to this day fully believes that the vaccine that she got, and I think she got 4 boosters, really helped her prevent from ever getting COVID. She will die on that hill. She's 78 years old right now. And I'm surprised, thank God she's still alive right now. However, she really believed what the media was telling her, and she won't change. She won't change her mind about Trump, because she fully believes everything that they've told her, everything that the Democrat Party has told her, has been Republicans are evil, everything that they're trying to do is evil, and that Trump got held accountable when he was in office in 2020 by people around him when it came to COVID. And so that's why Trump kind of settled down and was pushing the vaccine and stuff like that. She just feels the Democrat Party controlled him in that moment, and that's why. So they're stuck in this way of thinking based on what the media is telling them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you were so motivated by this, and you see this lack of information, misinformation is going out there. the attack on personal freedom, which really is like your mantle, right? The personal freedom issue. And so you embark on this campaign. How did one guy do that?
You mean when we were doing rallies?
Yeah.
It was weird. It was kind of really organic. I mean, it was really organic. We started to get people writing in through Instagram. I was doing Instagram lives and Facebook lives every day at the time. And then people would answer in. They would want to get involved. They would want to help. So then we started to get donors. We started to get people like volunteering, from airplane pilots to members. I mean, between Southwest Airlines and JetBlue, I probably got 25 free airline tickets for team members, if not more.
Yeah.
From airline pilots that were just still my friends to this day, like amazing patriots. And so, people just reached out, and then we started, we got several people together, and we just started raising money, and we planned this 6-city, 6-state tour.
The theme being?
With the theme just being teaching people about their rights,
Mm-hmm.
teaching them that all businesses are essential. They don't have to mask.
And what's the name of the organization that you founded?
We can control what goes in our brains and what goes in our veins. The organization is 1776 Forever Free.
Right.
And my T-shirts are all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Kirk's worn my shirt several times. Del Bigtree, who now works with Maha and RFK. I could go on. A lot of famous pastors, a lot of different people in different kind of industries really grabbed onto what we were doing. And, we did stuff like we did a bunch of Stop the Steal rallies. We did a lot of stuff with Walk Away. We did the Recall Gavin Newsom effort. We did the Trump bus tour with Mike Lindell. We did 3 events in D.C. We did a lot of Arizona election integrity stuff. We did the Reawaken America tour with Clay Clark. We were all over the place. We were all over the United States. I was a Diamond Medallion member with Delta in about 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cordy, if I can go back
please.
I'll say where that started, right? You said it was organic and that you started to do like, what was it, Instagram, like, and Facebook live streams and stuff. Had you ever done that before?
No, I never had even been on the political scene. And I had, my wife and I had a little bit of Facebook, but.
For the practice. Basically.
Yeah, for the practice. But before COVID happened, if you remember, all of us probably remember, like, social media wasn't what it is today. Mm-hmm. People interacted with social media, but it was small and very transactional. Or, that's how I remember it.
I have my birthday. Hey, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Here's
you're
some
cool.
Pictures of what I got to do on the
exactly.
weekend. Right.
And then you were off and you were unplugged.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't know if this was one of the other personal things they wanted to do to make us fat, dumb, and lazy and useless and disconnected from our families, and to make alphas, betas that want to cut off their dinglings, right? Probably, and become a he/she like Sarah McBride or Tim McBride or Chop It Off McBride, right? But whether it was intentional or not, it was very effective. Mm-hmm. So I went down a weave, but I can't get it back.
No, but that's all right. I think I appreciate you talking about that, right? Because one of the things that we talk about when we deal with volunteers here in Delaware is, I don't know where to get started. I'm not sure how to help. Hey, I've never done that before, whatever it might be. And I'm hearing you tell a story of like, hey, I hadn't ever gone to a protest before. I had never talked down a bunch of riot gear cops before. Had never done Facebook live streaming before. I hadn't ever figured out how to, organize rallies across state lines. You just figured all this stuff out by starting somewhere, starting small, building, right?
100%. I think you just have to be recklessly fearless. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to, everybody wants to be a patriot. And I say this all the time. We did a T-shirt. Quick side story. Everybody wants to be a patriot until it's time to do patriot. SH #T, right? Stuff, we'll say, since Nick wants to be cute and press the little the little
We're
the
family
little
friendly.
swear curse button.
We're somewhat family
Yeah,
friendly.
no, I get it. Which
Somewhat.
I never drop an F-bomb
Kid-friendly
from
bourbon.
stage. I always say I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, but I cuss a lot. You know, that's
There's
what I
an
always say.
angel on the cover.
But darn it. Where were we?
Everybody
So-
wants to be a patriot until
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
time to do.
So I'm with Colonel Jeff Powers. Okay.
Who's he?
So Colonel Jeff Powers, if you remember years ago, Roger Goodell, you know, the whole Kaepernick thing of people kneeling on the flag and all that.
Yep.
So there's a Marine Corps colonel that writes a letter to Roger Goodell, and he talks about that he's
the
a,
NFL commissioner.
yeah,
Right.
He talks about that he's a season ticket holder, probably one of the most well-written, beautiful. Here's my finger between the index and the ring to you, you POS,
Mm-hmm.
that I've ever seen.
Right.
And I see it, and it's been out for several years. It got 75 million views. It's been out for several years. I see it coming across my stream. And this is in the middle of my journeys around the country and all that. And so I reach out to this guy on Facebook, and he instantly, this colonel gets back to me. And then we start going back and forth on Facebook, and then I'm like, well, I love bourbon and cigars, kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
He's like, well, that's cray-cray, as they say. He didn't say that, but that's what I said.
Right.
He goes, I like bourbon and cigars too. I'm in Vista, which is literally 12 minutes from my office in Carlsbad, California. So we became BFFs for 2.5 years. You know, my wife loved him, but she did not like 3 times a week I was over at his house, sleeping on his couch because we were smoking
Right.
cigars and having a couple of bourbons
Right,
together,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so at any rate, one night in the middle of right after the election was stolen, in between the election being stolen and January 6th, he goes, you know, there was an energy that there was going to be a civil war. Or I remember a period where we didn't know what was going on, or I felt like there was nothing was off the table for what could happen in America. And I even felt that way while Biden was president and people were getting arrested still. And the FBI came to our door, and we didn't even go in the Capitol building at all. We just posted footage from the Capitol building, and they came to our doorstep and tried to ask me. And I told them to pack sand. And I said, well, what do you think about there being a civil war? People are saying this. And I'm not saying I agree with it. I was just pondering the question. And he goes, well, all it takes is 30 people to get in a group, and one person gets shot in the head. And now you're going to see 80% of that group totally flee because they don't know how to handle what they just saw. And he goes, Cordi, everybody wants to be a patriot until it's time to do Patriot, SH, #T.
Yeah.
And we put that on a shirt. And that's really, I think, symbolic of, you know, kind of what we felt during that time and what I felt and what prompted a lot of what I did was just not knowing the direction the country was going in, feeling like I was going to lose my business, like I had no other alternative, and feeling like this was a moment in history that I, given the opportunity that was opening up for me almost, and I had prayed on it, almost like God was saying, you need to do this. And, you know, I changed some things on the way I did it, but I probably wouldn't change much because it has taken me to all the loss I had in 2.5 years has taken me to an extremely new level of enlightenment about what is important, what matters, who matters, and really like looking at my time and my energy differently than I ever had before in my life.
Yeah, and that's the and listening to your talk and what happened was the colonial region of the western region of the Republican Party had a breakfast. They have it every year, Morning in America, and you were the guest speaker. And so we were present to hear that. But the theme that I took away from that, of many interesting aspects that you discussed, was this theme that I saw something that I didn't like, my beliefs, my values, you know, my commitment to the country, as a member of the Marine Corps. I felt like I had to do something, right? And
For sure.
what we constantly get, you know, all three of us in leadership positions here in the Republican Party, is we get people coming up saying, when you going to do this, and when you going to do that, and when you going to do
Somebody should do.
Somebody should.
Yeah. When are they going to?
And I remember in this headquarters here, we had a smaller headquarters when I first became the region chair. And we needed a bigger boat because we kept on getting people coming in, which is great. But people said, yeah, I think you should do this, and I think you should do that. And I said, hold on a minute. I said, I want you to understand something. If you want music, you need to pick up an instrument. I'll be the conductor, but you're going to have to pick up an instrument and start making the music. Because you have to now do something. And that's your theme. You have to do something.
Well, and not to interrupt you, Jim, I think that's what kind of disgusted me about COVID, too. And what generally probably disgusts me about politics.
Sheepishly just accepting it?
Well, yes, in some senses, yes, I would say that definitely did. But also that there are people that have way more money in their savings account, in their bank account. Mm-hmm. And they didn't do, you can bleep now, they didn't do shit. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything.
Right.
They could have done something, and they decided that their profit and pandering, and chiropractors were the biggest PU, money symbol wise that I've ever seen. Where, I'm wearing a mask because I don't want to offend my patients. Mm-hmm. I'm doing this so I don't offend my patients. And they profited. But like short term, I would say this to men across the country. I just like, why don't you just castrate yourself? Like, how do you call yourself a man right now? Mm-hmm. It's one thing if you feel like you can't keep the lights on the following day. It was funny when between SBA loans, PPP, and what I call lay down close, during the pandemic, in the middle of it, when, we did between 20 and 30 marketing events, external marketing events per month for our office to keep it running, right? My overhead was probably $40,000 a month, $50,000 a month. Mm-hmm. I know some people in chiropractic that $130,000. Oof. Ours was $40,000 or $50,000. Wow. Still a big nut to cover, and for us, anyways, for a small business, and we Our events, our capacity to get new people, which was our main deal, our main profit center, was totally destroyed. But when I started doing freedom stuff, patriots would come in and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're Cordie Williams. I want to sign up. I don't care. I was going to a chiropractor, but I want to be at a freedom place, mm-hmm. place where I know I'm free."
Right.
And it was, that 2.5 years later, that dried up, and Newsom still hadn't taken the mask mandates off, and that's kind of what did us in financially. We just couldn't hold out that long. It was not there. The numbers were not there. The numbers didn't work.
Right.
And but either way, that was very encouraging. It was really cool to see people say that, I want to be somewhere for my kids and my family where I don't have to wear masks, where nobody's going to ask me to do 6 feet of social distancing. We did it with the chairs for about 5 days, 10 days. And then I said, F this, we're not doing it anymore. Right. And really it was to pander to somebody if they walked in. Mm-hmm. Cops walked in and we almost got a cop under care. He's like, "I have to go and tell you this. I'm here to see Cordie Williams. I heard that he's, not mandating." Yeah, that's my husband. He's on the road. My wife called me. I'm like, "There's a cop that came in. He's telling us." I'm like, "Yeah, but he actually said he really likes what we're doing, and he's wondering if he can get care." I'm like, "Sounds like my type of guy."
Right.
Never saw him again.
Yeah.
Was there ever a chance, or did they push to close you down at all at any time?
So there was one time. This is a funny story. So the board in California, a state board complaint is really an allegation. So you could say that something happened. The board doesn't even review it. It's automatically an allegation. Because it's an allegation, it's like a complaint, and now I have to send it to my malpractice insurance. If I get 3 of those, I get dropped. And it can they're not even looking at it to see if it's true. You could just be pissed off at me. So if you didn't want to pay your bill, you're like, "Oh yeah, you overcharged me." Board complaint, and now I'm screwed, right? So and that happens with Yelp reviews as well, right? So we got a board complaint over our Christmas party, but something I kind of intentionally did, but I also did it because it made the most sense. When I incorporated 1776 Forever Free as a nonprofit, I did it at my California location where my business was. So I threw this huge Christmas party. Kids, we had alcohol there, we had Santa, we had everything, man. We had all these games in the floor. I mean, man, it was way over like fire code, I'll put it that way, right? We had a great time, right? Great time. And so they sent me this, letter. Oh, you did, it's COVID, the COVID mandates, you did a big party that's not allowed. So I copied the Constitution. I did a copy of that. 14th Amendment, something else, several amendments, and then I copied the California State Secretary of State's website where it showed 1776 was a nonprofit, and I said this was a Christian, spiritual, and constitutional party, right, done by the nonprofit 1776 Forever Free, and we have this amendment. If you have a problem with this, I'd be happy to have my attorney reach out to you. Something. Sent it back to them. Never reported it to my insurance company. Never heard anything from the state again. I was just like.
Tell you, you're a radical when you pull up the founding documents for this country and throw that out there.
It's
you
crazy.
Are a radical. Crazy.
You're going back to the founding fathers.
Oh my gosh.
Cray cray, as they say.
There you go.
Yeah, going back to.
Colonial.
These three. Who's that young man over here with the?
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
he's got that weird beard, those beard dots. I've never seen that.
It's just stubble.
Yeah.
It's like 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
a lot more hair too. Crazy.
Right.
So I was going to ask you. You've had a lot of amazing experiences here over the last 4 or 5 years, right? Do you have any advice for people here in Delaware who might be unhappy with the current state, the state of our state, the current direction of our state, and maybe they want to find ways to affect change? They want to find ways to get involved. Anything you'd recommend to them?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is, and I quoted this stat today, 4 out of 10, or 37% of adults and people 30 or older are getting their information online and through social media networks. And so, so many people that you can influence are right there that you don't see. Classmates, people maybe that you go to a city council meeting with, maybe some type of club, maybe, a group at your church, whatever, right? Maybe some type of club that you attend in your university. And you never know how far-reaching what you say, think, or do, the impact that can have on millions of people, right, in any moment. And the son of the founder of chiropractic in 1895, Dr. B.J. Palmer, said that. Like, one little thing that you say, it can have a ripple effect, almost like a stone in the water. And the way, you watch that stone skip, and it has this ripple impact, or a set of dominoes going down. And each domino chronologically hits the one in front of it. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for young leaders. And I said this morning. It's very impressive what Nick's done, what Nick Miles has done in the state of Delaware. There's an opportunity for anybody that's willing to jump and think outside the box and say, I don't like what's happening, and I don't know where my country's going to be in 5, 10, 15 years. Because, resiliency in this fight is so important, Chris. I mean, I think that we don't have a bigger enemy out there than complacency as far as doing a victory lap because of November 5th. And really, the other side's not doing that. You can see that with the injunctions. You can see that with some of the national NGO, Soros-funded protests that are going on nationwide right now. We don't have any time to pause. J.D. Vance, or somebody better that maybe God's going to present, but I don't know, he's looking pretty good from where I'm sitting, in 2028 has to win, or they're gonna undo everything Trump did the last 4 years, and it's going to be far worse than it was when sleepy, creepy Uncle Hair Sniffing Joe was in there, the hair sniffer in chief. So, we really have to, I think information they've been winning the propaganda war for a long time. I think when Elon bought X, that was a shift. When Trump really got Truth Social cooking, that was very. He had a lot of foresight to do that. I think that was brilliant. I think putting Devin Nunes in charge of that was brilliant. And, it made him another $5 billion. So that kind of definitely says that it was a great decision. But even more than that, that's another information platform. And now you got people like Rogan behind us. But we need to exploit all those contacts. And I hope that we fully are. I think we are. But we need people at a local level doing the same thing. And we need kids getting involved, fresh voices in the party in every state. And then we also need to get the state parties, if we can get more women involved and get the men past their egos, to be candid. Like, I honestly think we need more women to broker the deals that men are ineffective in doing, right? Because of our freaking egos. And get powerful women, the mama bears, because the movements I saw in COVID where people were really changing their minds about things is when you mention kids and you mention mama bears, there's a whole emotional, spiritual shift that happens. People react to their decision making differently. And I think that's something we're not, like, if we got more mama bears involved and more younger kids involved in politics, and we got them like actually seeing what happens in a state party, I don't know. I think there's a lot of fresh perspectives out there. And I think, another part of it is, in order to get that type of creativity and facilitate that, you have to get out this, kind of these clogs that you have in the wheel of kind of new information, right? You have your campaign managers that, are scumbags. You have people protecting their relationship capital because politics is about money, power, and influence. You have people in state party positions and RNC positions that don't want to let a new, fresh mind or perspective, that don't want to back a fresh perspective. And if you don't have the machine behind you, if you don't have the Trump machine behind you, you almost can't win in a lot of respects. So I think there's a fresh opportunity in the way for influencing and getting information out for kids. I think there's a great opportunity for kids to come to state party meetings and start to learn what they're doing, and then for them to just be a voice. And I think as men, we need to empower. If we get 10 new students or kids from young Republicans or wherever, from universities, to come to a GOP meeting, we need to hear from the frickin' kids. What are you guys seeing? What's the blind spot? We need to ask questions. It needs to be a trickle down from the top down method of, like, really looking at where are our blind spots? How come we're not winning more of the independents? And I think 2026 is going to be determined by the independents. And I think that's really going to shape what happens with Trump's agenda.
All right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Cool.
Awesome.
Hey, we're back from our break, and you have a cup of coffee now, right?
I do.
So,
Tasty.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nikolai.
good.
Jesse.
So we were getting ready to talk many moons ago about your Senate run in California. So why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So after, I don't know, 2 years of doing 1776 Forever Free, and going all over the country, really. Even though Roger Stone and others told me, that I couldn't win or whatever, I felt I could win the primary. I did my research. I felt like it was, a good thing for the brand of what I was doing for the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And I earnestly felt I was the best candidate out there. And there were only 7 people out there, and there was only one person that was really my competition for the primary. Went into it, fired 5 campaign managers, really learned a lot about myself. Hardest thing I've ever done, harder than doing the Paris Island in the Marine Corps, in my opinion.
Right.
And it ended up being at the very end, and I'm not saying this just because he's here. But in retrospect, you don't know what you don't know that you didn't even know it. I really wish I would have hired my good friend Nick Miles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that, Nick. I really do. I meant to tell you that later, by the way, but I'll tell you on the air now.
I appreciate that. I don't think there's a "told you so" button, but
Well, you would press it. You'd probably mash it down if you could.
All right.
With that very small thumb of yours. But you know, I didn't, and I had a series of people that, you know, you really find out there's this whole cabal within our party, circumventing freedom, circumventing us getting America First MAGA type candidates in there.
national,
And
for sure.
yeah, national and in a lot of states.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, I recognize it's not in Delaware, but
we
it's
have
in a-
we have our element in Delaware that haven't quite understood.
the campaign managers, the paid off Democratic operatives that come in on campaigns to squelch them, the people that, like Nick and I were talking about earlier today, that for petty, trivial things will just destroy somebody's future to keep their relationship capital or their upward climb, even though those fresh ideas could be, because, you know, the male ego, and I say this because, you know, over the years being in practice, I've worked with a lot of women, and, you know, in my develop introspectively, I've realized how fragile the male ego is and how many undeveloped men there are. As far as developed, like, what's our mission? What are we talking about right now? Are we adult men and we're talking about changing the lives of our kids' futures and trying to save the republic? Or are we so petty that money or some opportunity of advancement that we want to prevent somebody that might have a new perspective and idea that could radically shift and change the trajectory of our mission? Like, for example, if J.D. Vance doesn't meet Peter Thiel, there is no J.D. Vance.
Right.
If J.D. Vance doesn't meet Peter Thiel, there is no J.D. Vance. And Peter Thiel made J.D. Vance. He made the book, Netflix, all that came about through Peter Thiel,
Right.
from what I've been told. Everybody needs that attaboy, and I don't know culturally as a community of conservatives, we're not there yet. We're a lot better than we were 5 years ago, but there's still a lot of guns going inward. We say in the Marine Corps, there's guns pointed inward at the wagons instead of facing out towards the Native Americans that are trying to kill us.
Right.
And we're the cowboys, you know?
Right.
And that's got to shift. And so, you know, I definitely saw a lot of that. Fired 5 campaign managers. You know, it got down to the last 2 or 3 months of my campaign. It was me, my executive assistant that ended up becoming my campaign manager, and about a bunch of house mom volunteers on a text messaging service. And we were the most productive mother effers you have ever seen.
Right.
Versus these overpaid idiots that felt that they knew. The greatest campaign ads we came from my friend Dr. Howard Cohn, that has a practice in Orange County, where we got my son, little Cordi. He was 5 at the time, and he put on a red tie and a white shirt, and he stood in front of a flag and very presidential desk, and he goes, "My name's Dr. Cordie Williams, and I'm running for U.S. Senate. In California, they are pooping in the streets. My daddy always told me to poop in the toilet. Let's change California the Williams way," right? It's adorable. And then I come down by him and I go, I'm the real Dr. Cordie Williams, and I'm running for U.S. Senate, blah, blah. And I said whatever I said, right? 500,000 views, right? In California. Free marketing. Stuff like that. Like, why are we going to spend $30,000 on Facebook ads when a lot of that money, they were just working the formula to pay themselves?
And it's exactly what you said earlier, is involving the mama bears and the children.
Right.
That's what people paid attention to. And there's a kid that came out when I was still in high school called Kid President, and it was a young black kid who would just come on and he would just speak motivationally. He was on Ellen, he was on Oprah, he was on all those shows, and he became popular just because he was a kid, and he would just say things that were real, and it worked out. I mean, he blew up in the political apparatus of that specifically, and then with, your son doing that video, a lot of people paid attention to that because it was something that they probably would want to watch. Oh, look, there's a kid that's like hanging out with his dad, and it's something that's emotional. It emotionally grabs them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we pulled up to when the gas crisis was going on. We had him getting a Power Wheels, and we pulled up next to a gas pump, and we did a funny one there about gas prices and Joe Biden and all that. But it was just that unconventional thinking where I really took control of my campaign.
Right.
But I think that's one of the really cool things that you guys have going on in Delaware. It seems like you do a lot of mentoring and matching of candidates and supporting of candidates. I think we as state parties need to somehow to like streamline that whole process. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't have any suggestions on what that would be. But even if we streamlined it 50%, and then we got the RNC involved in, one race in every state in every election cycle, whatever that monetary amount is, oh my God. Because look at how organized the Democrats have been. I mentioned this earlier with the NGOs and George Soros.
Oh, yeah.
And look how it's impacting the play of the game on the field right now.
So I wanted to.
We're trying to throw touchdowns, and we can't because
Right.
we have these federal judges that are blocking us every which way but loose. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to hit two issues. One of them is to go on the children, the kids theme, and then the next one about faith. Years ago, we went on vacation and we went down to Cape Canaveral. And in one of the exhibits we went into, they talked about the mission to Mars. I'm talking about 10 years ago. And so what they did was they talked about the challenges that you would face in trying to do a mission to Mars. And what they did was as they started the countdown in this fictional rocket taking off to Mars, you're seeing people my age, your age, in the control room going through the countdown. But as the countdown continued to go, they became younger and younger and younger, so that finally when it was liftoff, you're looking at 7, 8-year-old kids who were in the control room. Think about the messaging there. What they were saying is, it's not me that's doing it. It's not you that's doing it. It's your children who are doing it. They're the ones. What we're doing now is to enable them to be able to do it. And the reason why that's very powerful is because what we're not doing now is denying our children an opportunity to succeed and advance the way with the opportunities that we had, because we're robbing them of that, because we're not committed enough to that cause, because we're consumed with this and enjoying all the fruits of the labor that my parents went through.
Yeah.
Enjoying that, but not recognizing we need to do the same for them. Every generation always wants to have the opinion that I'm leaving the world a better place because of what I did. And I'm going to have to sit back and say we should really question whether we're doing that. Our education system is a mess. Our quality of life is a mess. We're leaving them a massive debt that they can't recoup from. That massive debt is one of the biggest factors towards inflation. So it's all those factors. And so I think what you just did there, it's a very powerful message when you have your 5-year-old that's doing that. And I think we have to be more cognizant of that issue, of that we're doing this for our children or our grandchildren.
Yeah, I think in the effort to, I think President Trump did this beautifully, and he continues to do it. I've seen him 10 times and been 5 feet away from him a couple of times. There's such a raw sincerity to the way that he speaks to people and relates to people that from a sales perspective, it's brilliant. And a lot of that charisma, it can't be taught. Like it's a natural instinct that someone has to read a room and connect with people on a very heart, soul level. And he does that very well. I think that if you could encapsulate that or teach that, I think that's what we have to do as Republicans. Because the old way, he won in 2016, and he won and he created this revolution. And this is what we all need to remember. not by being what the establishment had been for decades and decades, not acting prim and proper and presidential like, douchebag Obama or Bush Sr., or Bush Jr., or Bill Clinton. He did it because he was relatable. People want relatable. They want real.
Mm-hmm.
They want somebody that's going to tell them, what's going on and be transparent.
Right.
And I don't think prior to 2016, I know for sure, and now we had never had that. And so I think that's something that, if we can learn how to replicate that and teach that to these kids, oh my God, it's going to be so powerful for the party.
Yeah, agreed. Now you mentioned several times about faith and that it maybe helped you drive you to where you ended up going, right? And you ran for Senate. Obviously, you didn't win. You said you came in third, and there was issues there. Trying to beat a structure, right? That with a newcomer, an outsider to some extent, and then you had some people close to you that passed away. You missed some time with your children, and then you end up coming to deciding to move to New York to be closer to your sister-in-law and her husband, which is where your wife is from, and now you live in New York now. And during this time period, things changed for you, but you did talk about this faith aspect. You want to expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I would just say I think that God does things for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And we meet people for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And I think that, my journey the last 4 years, we'll say, has really taught me about how to value time. And it's taught me a lot about, people in your life and the ones that are important. My good friend Chris Lippy always said, if you had 5 friends that you could say were your friends, right, you'd be winning, because we have many acquaintances, but we have few friends.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just generally think that anything that happens in life is because God's hand is kind of leading us through that. And in my journey, I think God was trying to show me how to appreciate every moment differently, how to enjoy every moment, how to not get so busy. I think that's something we're all trying to do all the time, but I think the campaign and then, a lot of family death after the campaign really, helped me realize that, I really need to look at that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so where do we go now?
Well, I don't know, man. People ask me all the time. I get asked, "Would you run again?" And I don't know. That's still an open book. If it made sense, if the numbers added up, financially, time-wise, vote-wise, all that. I do want another mission. I feel like I've always felt like I'm supposed to do something with or for President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what that looks like. And maybe God doesn't have that in the cards for me.
Right.
We've got some great practices going on in Long Island. My mom, Freudian slip. My wife is doing some, organic makeup, and she's helping families get, kind of more green lifestyle, green living, very in touch with the Maha type of lifestyle.
Right.
And we're loving life and raising boys. So, more of that, getting closer to God, and, watching my boys get older and enjoying those moments, and really picking and choosing where I do stuff, valuing my time a lot more.
Right.
Because I went all in, went 150 grand in, went 2 million in on my business. But, I wouldn't change it for the world, because I learned a lot. And I learned kind of some lessons about the importance of knowing how precious our mortality is, and really how precious our relationships are
Mm-hmm.
with the people we love and care about. And, I had an appreciation for that before, but I don't know the level that I do now that my dad, stepfather, mom, and uncle passed away. And,
Right.
all that time transpired between COVID and where we are here today.
Yeah. But the key final idea, I guess, would be that you saw something that you felt was wrong, and you felt you had to take an action to do it. You did it. Became very influential and very maybe powerful isn't the right word, but you certainly were influential and were able to get other people to follow you in that on a mission that you felt was worth the dedication, even though it created a need for sacrifice, right?
Yeah, and I think anything you do, that's going to be, the situation. I forget what Gretzky said, but, it was something to the effect of, you miss every shot you never take, that type of thing, right? And, I think, I went for a home run. I went for a home run from 1776 to the what I did with the campaign and all that. But it was an unusual time, and I was in an unusual place because of that unusual time. And I think I needed a shift then because I think I was unfulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I needed a kick in the face to kind of appreciate more what to be grateful for.
Right.
Yeah.
So, well, we appreciate you coming down with your inspirational words, and it was a great talk today. And thank you very much for your time here. And I know you've been asked to come back, so hopefully we can make sure that works out. And,
Of course.
And hopefully,
Honored.
I haven't had the opportunity meeting President Trump either, so maybe our wishes will be fulfilled. So
I love it. Well, I know a guy that knows a guy.
So, any final comments as we close it out?
And then also tell us where to follow you and
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, the only thing I would say is all the problems we have in this country aren't going to fix themselves.
Right.
And the very exact person that's out there listening right now and thinks they have no part in this, or they don't have this skill set, or they're not a speaker, time, hands, and money. Everybody can donate their time. Everybody can donate their hands by doing something, and everybody, or some people, can donate their money.
Mm-hmm.
You can do one of those three.
Right.
And that may be the starting point to, a career. It may be the starting point to doing a lot of cool stuff in politics, where you meet really cool, connected people and you become lifelong friends with them. But it's got to be about the mission, I think, of saving our kids, because that's really what all this is about, right? We should be able to control what goes in our kids' brains and what goes in our kids' veins.
Right.
And for the last 5 years, big government's been trying to take that.
Yep.
So stand up, lead by example, show resiliency, show courage and commitment, and get with your state party and try to get plugged in, because people are crying for a alternative, and they're crying out for knowledge, and our ability to convey the message between now and 2026 is going to determine how successful President Trump's agenda is.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. Cordi.
All right, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you
God
very
bless
much.
you. Appreciate you. Thanks, Nick.
All right.
Thanks for
Take
coming
care. All right. Thanks, everybody.